A senator handcuffed, people snatched off the streets by masked agents, judges threatened, and the military deployed on U.S. citizens. This is the new normal right here in the United States, even if there's nothing normal about it. It has spurred talks about the state of our democracy and where the country is headed. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was asked this week at an Indianapolis Bar Association event about what keeps her up at night, and here's what she said.
I would say the state of our democracy. I would say that I am really very interested in getting people to focus and to invest and to pay attention to what is happening in our country and in our government.
And joining us now to discuss this and more is former Georgia House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams, host of the podcast Assembly Required. She was a Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia in 2022, and her novel, Coded Justice, comes out July 15th. Stacey, it's great to have you here with us on set. Really appreciate it. And we're going to talk about the book in just a second. But I think a lot of people this week saw an interview in which you laid out for this country, along with what we just heard about the state of our democracy, the 10 steps to authoritarian rule. And I think a lot of people, you know, the hair on the back of their necks probably stood up out of fear that when you kind of outlined the 10 steps that would get us there or that have gotten us there, we are already at number 9. And that is a scary thought. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Absolutely. And I want to give credit to Professor Kim Scheppel at Princeton University. She and I were doing a presentation together, and she walked through her 10 steps. I will admit that if you've heard her original presentation, I've kind of remixed it a little bit because I want people to understand it at a visceral level, that we think of autocracy as something that happens to other people. It happens in other countries, but it's happening here right now under our noses. It's when Congress votes for a bill that it knows will hurt the people they're supposed to serve, but they say they're doing it because they don't want to lose an election. It's when the judiciary says, well, we're going to let the president do whatever he wants because we don't have the power to stop him, instead of using the power that's embedded in the Constitution. But it's also when you see military forces being used against civilians in violation of posse comitatus, and you hear the justification being, well, we just don't want dissent. We don't want to hear from you. We see people being attacked. And for me, that's why DEI was such a huge target of this president, because you have to blame someone. And if you don't blame yourself, you make the vulnerable and the dispossessed the people that you turn on. And then most of all, what we have to understand is that this is intentional and it works. It has worked in every nation, whether we're looking at Turkey and Erdogan, Putin and Russia, where no matter where we're looking, these are the steps. But we have the power to push back. Because part of knowledge is once you know what to push back on. When you see these things happening, when you see the head of Health and Human Services increasing the danger to our communities, let's tell each other the truth about vaccines. Let's talk about why people got fired from their jobs. It's not because of fraud, waste, and abuse. It's because of a president and a party that want to break democracy, so we stop remembering what it looked like to live in a country that worked.
So often when I'm on the road for MSNBC, I talk to people who kind of would naturally agree with you on all of that. But they tell me they have to turn and tune out the news. They are exhausted. They do not feel empowered. They don't see change happening on the local level. They talked during the campaign to me about how Democrats that they had trusted would promise certain things to them and then never come back around. And so they're at this point where they're tuning a lot of this out. And it's sort of this weird thing where on the one hand, you're grateful that humans are resilient, but it's also very inconvenient because what it means is that there's only so much information they can take and so much fight they feel on a day-to-day basis they have. What responsibility, and I guess what tactic do Democrats need to take now to make people believe they actually are empowered if we're this many stages into this, to do something, to hold people accountable?
Well, I think what resonated about the conversation that I had is that the first step is making sure people can connect the dots. We often talk in these broad brushstrokes and these, polemical terms and these $30 words: autocracy, authoritarianism, oligarchs. Now let's make it real. So that's the first job. Take it out of the ether and bring it down to the lived experience. Your kid's not going to get free lunch at school because these people who were supposed to protect your lunch said that we'd rather give private jets to billionaires. And I'm not being hypothetical. You can write off the cost of a jet, but you have to pay $3,000 for an ambulance. Like, we've got to talk about it in real terms. Number two, though, we have to start delivering. Democracy has to deliver if we want people to protect it. Autocracy wins when people stop believing that democracy is worth it. And that goes to your point. So it's not blaming the other guy alone. Yes, we need to talk about who's at fault, but let's talk about what we can do right. If we know that the problem is people aren't voting, it's not enough to lecture. Let's listen and find out, why aren't you voting? Why aren't you paying attention? If the school board isn't serving our kids, let's not wait for the $1 billion to come from Washington. Let's think about the community program we can set up that can solve this problem right now. Before we had power, we had each other. And Democrats have to return to the notions of community, of delivery, of engagement, and of fairness. But we've got to live it. We've got to show it. And we know how to do it because we do it every day as people, as citizens, as neighbors. We just have to show that Democrats see this and we're willing to do the work.
What does it mean, actually, to deliver, at least at the federal level, at a point when Democrats are in the minority? If you look at public polling on views of the Democratic Party, they're in the toilet. They're worse than Donald Trump's own polling. And I think it's partly because Democrats are seen as not fighting. They're seen as not pushing back sufficiently. But on the other hand, if they're in the minority, they actually have very few tools available to them. So I don't understand how you get out of this catch-22.
So I was minority leader in Georgia. I mean, they give you the title leader to make you feel good. They put minority in front of it so you never forget. Like, they're very clear about what you are. But what we did was we spent a lot of time on the ground actually connecting the dots. You can't say this is bad in the abstract. You got to explain to people what they could have had. And so, no, Democrats in Congress cannot change the law, but they can change the conversation. They can have repeated conversations, explaining civics, engaging people, and then not dismissing their micro issues, trying to come up with macro solutions. We don't have the power to pass law, but we do have the power to say, in your neighborhood, if this is a problem, I'm going to help you navigate it. I'm going to make sure that my chief of staff and my constituent service person is on the phone with you. When you get that call that something's happened with your Social Security check and you get caught in the loop with the AI chatbot that's no longer helping you, when you call me to ask for help, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stay on the phone with you. I'm going to help figure it out. It is granular work, but it's granular work we can do. And more importantly, and this goes to your question, we can then spread it out. We can ask community members, the ones who keep calling saying, do this for me. You can say, look, I'm going to put together a little task force. Will you, Antonia, come on Thursdays to my office and help me call back all of these seniors who need help? We've got to stop waiting for power and actually build community and build power where we are. That's part of what we did in Georgia. We didn't wait. When people were told they couldn't sign up for the ACA, I stood up, I hired 60 people to go throughout South Georgia and knock on people's doors. I did that as a legislator. I had to find some money for it, but I wasn't going to wait for the governor, a Republican governor, to change his ideological viewpoint. I changed my approach. And we've got to stop waiting for the macro and focus on the micro. Democracy has to deliver.
Can I ask you then, with all of that in mind, what your reflections are on Zohran Mamdani and what we've seen transpire here in New York City? It was no surprise necessarily that there were Democrats who were a little slow or still are slow to get behind him right now. But some of the venom from within the party, I think, did take people here in the city and around the country by surprise. I'm curious, his policies aside, he walked the length of Manhattan. He still, to this day, is going into bars, talking to voters, going to community events, actually shaking hands, talking to people about the solutions, the very micro problems they have in their day-to-day lives, and trying to offer them a sort of vision for the future that often voters here say they're not hearing from their senators, city council members here. So do you think Democrats are going to learn lessons from the race here? And what are those lessons that you think they should learn?
I think they will learn lessons. We're already starting to see this. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. But let's understand the most important lessons. He listened. He didn't lecture. He went into places where people didn't expect to see him, and he listened. 2, he didn't offer 30-point plans with footnotes. He said, it's clear that this is a problem. I'm going to offer a clear solution. Now, the art of politics is turning that solution into turning that idea into actual policy. But you've got to begin by at least acknowledging the complexity of the issue, but the clarity of your offer. And he did that. Number 3, he met people where they were, in bars. He met Gen Z on TikTok, and he didn't try to pretend to be someone he wasn't. He was very clear that this is who I am, and this is what you get. And in politics, that's dangerous. It is dangerous to not fit the mold. But I think what Democrats can learn best of all is that when we are authentic, when we do lean into who we are, instead of trying to be what we think people want us to be, we're much more successful. I mean, we have a flim-flam artist in the White House, but he has been a flim-flam artist for 40 years. We've known it the whole time. We may not, I personally revile everything he stands for, but I'm never surprised by what he does. And the reality is people don't necessarily know who they can trust until you show them who you are. And what he did was show people who he was, who he intends to be when he's in office. And that, in this moment, matters.
Can I ask about when you kind of take the lessons of the autocracy threat that you have outlined and kind of look back? And I know that hindsight's always 20/20. It's not that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden didn't frame the threat. I think they made a compelling argument how Donald Trump was going to be dangerous. I mean, some of the things that they've said, certainly the vice president when she was running, turned out to be very true. She was very prophetic in the way that she described who Donald Trump was going to be and the threats that he was going to pose to our democracy. Why do you think that did not resonate, the threat of Donald Trump as a catalyst for autocracy did not resonate with voters? And does that mean the case or making a case about the threat of autocracy is not something that you win an election on?
Autocracy is an abstract construct. We can use that term over and over again, but watching someone get kidnapped off the streets and deported to a third world nation or deported to a dangerous place they've never been before, that's a very real, visceral thing that 6 months ago no American believed could happen in this country. We did not think that thousands of workers would be fired without cause by our federal government. So there is something to be said about theory versus reality. And we have an arrogance in America that it can't happen to us. We think we're invulnerable. And so I don't think there is any amount of stridency that could have come from that campaign that could have prepared us for the speed and depth of the craven behavior that we're seeing and how easily, I mean, it's what Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said, democracy is under assault, and we didn't think it could happen to us. That said, democracy, we defended the construct of democracy. But this goes back to the questions that you asked. Democracy has to deliver. We have to go beyond we are defending democracy to we are protecting you and we are delivering for you and we are going to provide what you need. People respond to the notion that you are there for them when they understand that you understand them. And that's the work that I think she only had 100+ days to do that. And that's a hard thing to do. But let's also remember, he got 77 million votes. She got 75 million votes. We weren't talking about a sea change in American behavior. But we did see that 90 million people, for various reasons, did not feel activated, did not feel that they had a space or the right to engage. That's the place we should be paying attention. Those are the folks we should be engaging. Those are the folks who turned out in this last election in New York. That's where our attention has to be. Hindsight is 20/20, and Monday morning quarterbacking doesn't earn you any money. So let's put our money on what does work, and that is showing up right now and proving to people that democracy can deliver.